One More is back with another set of true wireless earphones. The ColorBuds 2 are not just a iteration over their previous generation models because they have had a complete overhaul. New drivers, ANC that's been added, and among a few other features. And in this review, you're going to see if it's worth its price tag, because in the UK it can be found for £73 and in the US it can be found for $80. So diving straight in, let's talk about Bluetooth codec. And here, very much like its predecessors, it supports the SBC and AAC codecs, the latter being the better out of the two for iOS users, but for Android users you'll be intrigued to know that it supports the aptX adaptive codec. Indeed, it one-ups its predecessor where it only supported the aptX codec. Now these are both great inclusions, but the adaptive codec, which is featured in the ColorBuds 2, makes it all that little bit better in terms of getting the best out of the sound quality out of these earphones, and indeed with a phone that supports it. Now while that's all well and good, what about when it comes to sound quality? Now the ColorBuds 2 are a complete overhaul over the regular ColorBuds because they have 7mm dynamic drivers in comparison to the full range balanced armature drivers that were found before. Now as a result, as some people who will be intrigued to know in terms of the differences here, the ColorBuds 2 sound a lot more dynamic, not pun intended, but they have a little bit of a different sound signature, and I'm all for it. First off, let's talk about the sub-bass response. Here, the ColorBuds 2 extend pretty well in the low end. Of course, they won't compete with more expensive earphones out there on the market, but in the grander scheme of things, for earphones that come in at sub $100, I think most people will be left pleasantly impressed. Now, as for its mid-bass, I was expecting to be a little bit uncontrolled, but that's not quite the case. The ColorBuds 2 do a phenomenal job in this department, providing a very lively mid-bass sound signature and one that will definitely keep a lot of people excited. Now, as for its mids, here it does fall off a little bit. It does sound a little bit pushed back, and there's a little bit of a recessed nature. If I compare it to other earphones out there on the market that come in at this price point, I will say that there's some earphones out there from manufacturers such as Sennheiser or even the likes of Honor that provide a little bit more of a forward mid-centric sound, which might be a bit more pleasing to people who are listening to vocal tracks or, let's say, classical music. Now, as for the highs, I think here the earphones do a pretty good job. They do tail off at the very top end and do sound a little bit rolled off, but again, in the grander scheme of things and for the price point, I've got no real complaints. Now, my biggest complaint of the original predecessors, the ColorBuds 1, shall we say, was their overall soundstage. They just didn't sound, well, all that dynamic, and thankfully this has been addressed with the use of, well, ironically, dynamic drivers. They just come alive a lot better. The instrument separation is there, the overall width and depth, while it does sound closed in comparison to the likes of, let's say, the Creative Outlier Air or some other earphones out there on the market, these earphones definitely do provide a lot more of an engaging sound. Yet again, consumers at this price will definitely be left, well, interested. They will be listening to their music, they'll be tapping their toes, and that's not what I could say about the original ColorBuds. So what One More has done over here should definitely be commended. Now moving swiftly on, we get onto ANC performance. Now here, the earbuds can't quite compete with the Oppo Enco Free2, nor previous iterations of One More ANC earphones. Now the reason behind this is because they use a different algorithm from what they did in other One More earphones, and a ANC feature here is a nice inclusion, but not something of a headline feature. Ultimately here, the ANC is not bad because you combine it with the great passive noise isolation, and the ColorBuds 2 do a decent job. All I'm trying to say over here is that if ANC is very important to you, then you might want to look elsewhere and or spend more money. Now there's a few little things I do want to mention. There is no way of actually fully disabling ANC. You might think that's a little bit odd, and so did I. So I reached out to One More and I asked them about it, and they said that that feature is indeed the way it's supposed to work. In other words, you have ANC enabled, or you disable it by going on to a pass-through mode and therefore hearing your surroundings. There's no way of toggling on and off on ANC, which is quite intriguing, but might even change later down the line with some firmware updates. Now you might also have a very keen eye and you might think, wait, One More have quoted a ANC on and off figure on their website when it comes to battery life. And indeed here, if you take out one of the earbuds, in other words running it on a mono format, be it the left or right driver, then here you'll find that ANC is not working because, well, the microphones are not doing that job. Hopefully that makes sense. If you got any questions, ask me down in the comment section below. And now we get onto recording quality. Now everything you can hear is coming directly from the earphones, although it does seem to be often losing my voice or struggling to pick up my voice recent times, and this wasn't the comments that I said about the original predecessors, which does seem to be a little bit of regression, even though the technology that One More claims to have has not changed when it comes to microphone inputs. Now, just for comparison, here the Creative Outlier Air V1 should I mention, and here you'll be able to potentially hear for yourselves the differences between the One More earphones and the Creatives. Subjectively, I prefer the Creatives, although they do suffer from quite a bit of environmental noise around, so if you do want a little bit of a bettered audio recording, then consider, let's say, the Oppo Enco Free2, which do a better job than both these earphones combined. And now we get onto the app, and right now you can see that the ANC function is on, and that's because I'm actually wearing both earphones. As soon as I get one out, you can see the ANC function disables, and the same would apply if I get both earphones out of my ears. And indeed, the pass-through function cannot be set up without the earphones being both in your ear. Now, past there, you've got the smart playback, so this is like an auto pause function, and then you've got the custom settings, and that's for you to adjust the double tap or the triple tap functions. The only thing to be mindful over here is that you can only adjust it per the menus that you've got. So for example, if you wanted the left to be play and pause on a double tap, and a double tap on the right would say increase the volume, you couldn't do that because you have to select it per row, shall we say. Hopefully that makes sense, but it should be pretty obvious if you have the earphones. Now then you've got the SoundID. Now the SoundID I haven't really touched upon in terms of the sound quality section, and that's purely because I didn't really feel it impacted the sound quality in a positive way. This gets you in terms of having, like, let's say, a hearing test, and gives you a custom EQ, and you can enable it or disable it. From mine, I found that it had no positive impact in terms of sound quality. If anything, it degraded the sound quality. So I left this completely disabled, but of course you might disagree and you might enable it and have it have a better positive impact in terms of your sound quality, but that's not the case for me. Now elsewhere you do have the firmware update that you can enable straight away from here. You've got a quick setup guide as well, and then you've got some soothing sounds that you can enable, and if you go on the One More tab at the top right, you can also have some experimental features or even have a smart burn-in. Now moving on, we get onto battery life, and here the earphones will last for around 6 hours on a single charge, and the case will provide an additional 18 hours. As I did mention before, with the ANC on and off toggle, I have to take the manufacturer's on claim because, well, you can't fully disable ANC and run these earphones in a stereo format, at least not at the time of filming. Now when it comes to the charging case itself, it can be wirelessly charged, which is an additional feature over its predecessors, and here if you've got a compatible QI wireless charger, then you can feed some power to it. Now you can also plug it in via USB Type-C input. This supports fast charging as well, and it'll take roughly 1 to 2 hours to charge from 0 to 100%. Now as for the design of the case, I'm very much a fan of what One More have achieved over here. Very much like its predecessors, it's got a nice sort of design and therefore can fit in most regular sized pockets and isn't too heavy or indeed bulky. It doesn't have any sharp edges either. Now as for the earphones themselves, they haven't got a massive form factor and therefore I feel will fit most size ears, even if you've got smaller ear canals or indeed smaller ears, to people who have larger ears. And of course you've got a selection of different earbuds, silicone tips that is, inside the package. Now when it comes to the actual usability of the earphones, they have touch inputs on either side. Now I did find myself frantically tapping on left or right earbuds respectively to change the song, for example, or let's say play and pause. Here, it didn't feel as responsive as the original ColorBuds. I just found that it just didn't respond as fast as I liked it to do. And furthermore, very much like the original predecessors, in other words the regular ColorBuds V1s, here I found that when you are touching on the side of the earbud or the housing, it resonates within your ear and therefore can create somewhat of an uncomfortable experience. And so this brings me on to my verdict. Would I recommend the One More ColorBuds 2? Well, in comparison to their predecessors, absolutely. I think One More should really be commended for doing a complete overhaul of their earphones while providing an affordable earphone that has a lot of features. However, in comparison to its alternatives, my money would go towards the Oppo Enco Free2, or alternatively, for example, the Creative Outlier Air, the Honor Choice earbuds, or let's say if I had a bit more money, I'd go for the Sennheiser CX 400BT or the Cambridge Audio Melomania Touch. Those are the earphones that I would outright recommend, specifically at this price point, be it for their features and or the overall sound quality that you get. But of course, that's my subjective opinion about these earphones, so I'm intrigued to be hearing yours in the comment section below. Now, if you've liked this independent review and want to see more, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.